A&M opens the SEC play for them on a bye week last week against the Auburn Tigers in Kyle Field. This is a game that I think is very critical for the Aggies. You don't want to get off to a slow start, especially after defeating Notre Dame the way you did, and very exciting back and forth contest. Obviously, the passing game was electric. This is basically a brand new A&M team compared to last year, where you go into every game now thinking, well, we can win through the air instead of we have to establish the run and we have to do all these things perfectly to have a chance. Now you match up pretty well against every team left on your schedule, but I think all of us, obviously Taylor was covering the game, that, outside of John Mateer, now we're finding out he broke his hand, Oklahoma's quarterback, and got surgery today. I mean, that's one tough SOB if I've saved so myself, finish the game that way. But Auburn is not an easy team to beat. They had a chance to win that game. Obviously, some mistakes late, missed opportunities by quarterback Jackson Arnold. Obviously, there was, I think, that deep pass to Cam Coleman that would have resulted in a touchdown. Just a lot of mistakes that prevented them from pulling off the upset win. But honestly, from what I've seen, defensively, it's a pretty solid team outside. I think the secondary is a little shaky. I did hear there was an injury that we'll get into, potentially one of their starting quarterbacks that might not play in the game. But overall, Taylor, what were your thoughts on the loss to Oklahoma? And do you think Auburn's close to really kind of breaking through and fixing these mistakes and potentially pulling off the upset this weekend?
It was a loss that was pretty tough. Of course, the discussion of the officiating is still very hot here in this part of the state, and I guess really everywhere in the SEC. I saw a clip of a podcast, McCready and Siskey, and AJ McCarron was a guest, and AJ McCarron of all people said that Auburn got hosed. So that's I feel like that's kind of how you know that this is a real deal. This was a pretty bad thing. But outside of that, with Auburn still having a chance to win, I feel like it's just one of those situations where we saw it a little bit last year where they just have to get out of their own way. The offensive line was, shaky, of course. I think Pro Football Focus and a few others had 9 sacks. Oklahoma credits 10. Either way, it's a lot. And I think I counted 23 pressures as well too, and that's not great in one game. Penalties weren't that great either. I think I counted 12. They didn't all count, of course, but 12 penalties that were offensive line related. So that's an issue that we kind of thought was going to be a strength going into the beginning of the year, because we have Dylan Wade, who had moved around. I think he had gotten over 100 snaps at 3 different positions last year. Bringing a guy from USC, Mason Murphy. We bring in a guy from Virginia Tech and Xavier Chaplin. Center Connor Liu, who's been proven to be a pretty solid center, and then Jeremiah Wright coming back for his 5th year too. So we thought, okay, we're pretty solid at this offensive line, and then they get challenged at Oklahoma. So I feel like there's a little bit more question there, whether it be pass protection, whether it be schemes, whether it just be miscommunication, whatever. I kind of leave that to the question too. And then we really got to see one of the weaknesses of Jackson Arnold, and that was holding on to the football for too long. And, back in the summer, I can't remember how deep in the summer, I think it was right after Hugh Freeze was getting criticized for his golf game. There was a video going around of him throwing his visor down, mad at Jackson Arnold, and everybody was like, oh, Jackson Arnold may not be the quarterback that Auburn wanted, and Hugh Freeze is already upset, and there's a chance that he may not even win the job. And I wasn't looking at Hugh Freeze in that video. I was watching Jackson Arnold hold on to the ball. Like, even me, like, it wasn't even a game. It was a video of a practice that I'm sure it happened a few hours before. And I'm like, throw the ball. And we saw that again on Saturday too. So, defensively again, got to watch the passing game, the run game. Stopping the run is still really good. Something I've really enjoyed watching out of this team so far. But the passing game, again, a little shaky there. Really both sides of the ball. If you look at the passing game, that's going to be the answer of some concerns I have now of this team watching them play 4 games.
Yeah, definitely. When I first came into this season, I definitely thought Auburn's offensive line had vastly improved, especially over the offseason. You saw them bring in Xavier Chaplin, who I thought was one of the best guards or tackles out of the portal. But I've just seen all over social media and all over certain boards that it's just how can they even compete with these defensive lines if they're just going to hold the ball for that long. And from what it seems like so far, Jackson Arnold has kind of made the first read and then not exactly known to kind of look onto the second one and follow his progressions from there. So I get why Hugh Freeze is in these viral videos of throwing his hat down, because that's really what every coach is going to do in that situation. And it's just the fact of the matter that it was just, so there was a video coming out about Auburn for that. So it was just the pick of the day. And I'm sure that after last week, when John Mateer, and it was the whole homecoming of Jackson Arnold back to Norman, where's the headspace that kind of Auburn fans are looking towards the rest of the season, or at least the next couple of games?
I feel like if Auburn had not performed the way they did against Baylor in the season opener, it would be about what it's been the last 5 years, and that's, oh no, here we go, another 5-7 year, another 4-8, whatever the case is. But I think that there's a little bit of hope somewhere because of what they saw against Baylor, and they do know that, like looking ahead to the rest of the season, you've got Kentucky coming up. You feel like that's a winnable game. Vanderbilt, who really knows? Auburn struggled with them last year, but who really knows what that's going to be like? Missouri, could be another winnable game, and you feel like you've got the talent around, especially on defense, that there's a little bit of hope that they can get over that hump of not losing 7 games for the 5th year in a row. But there is, still a little concern on the offense as far as, you've got probably one of the best receiving corps in the nation, but you have to get them the ball. And I think that's probably the biggest concern right now is we've got to watch opposing pass rushers and what if Jackson Arnold can get to his reads a little quicker.
Yeah, we definitely saw last year, I think the general consensus was this offense for Auburn wasn't necessarily bad. It was just they kept turning the ball over and over. It was not sustaining drives, because if they had not had those costly turnovers, the Oklahoma game from last year comes to mind.
Right.
It was just a whole lot of just turnover mess after turnover mess. And the hope was that Jackson Arnold coming in would be able to fix a couple of those. But this is a team now that when I still look at their defense, and they're, as of right now, I think they're still sitting top 25 in opponents' points per game, sitting in the middle teens. So this is a defense that can compete with the rest of the SEC in terms of limiting opposing offenses. And definitely from what I've seen so far, I really haven't seen them not score outside of the red zone this year. Is that necessarily true, or am I just getting all of my facts wrong?
Yeah, that's another thing that's improved with this Auburn team too, is the red zone was not that great last year scoring. And you bring up the the other offense too, and that Oklahoma game kind of goes back to Peyton Thorne. I don't know if it was a system thing or if he was just nervous or what the deal was, but it's one thing that I am thankful for, if there is anything like any silver lining to Jackson Arnold holding on to the ball longer than he should, is that he's not making a lot of bad decisions like Peyton Thorne did. And you go back to the turnovers, he's either, doesn't remember the route, or he's, you saw, I think it was in the Oklahoma game. It may not have been the interception that was returned by Kip Lewis, a guy that's going to be in our nightmares forever, because he had the returned interception last year and he led Oklahoma in tackles last game. So he's a guy that I don't even know what year he is, but I'm glad that we don't have to see him next year, at least, or for a few years, because Kip Lewis has just been a Auburn killer. But there would be times where he would just throw the ball and there would be an interception, or it would, be, you could tell that he had a route in mind and the receiver was going the other way. And you could kind of see last year in that Oklahoma game, like visibly he and Hugh Freeze, going back and forth on the sideline. There seemed to be some confusion about what was going on. And so that is, a couple things that have gotten better. I think there were a couple long passes. I know Cam Coleman's first touchdown against South Alabama was one that I remember that he kind of threw from over 30 yards. But yeah, it's been relatively close. Jackson Arnold, I think, he's only gotten over 200 yards twice this year. in passing game. He didn't do it against Baylor, and he didn't do it against South Alabama just because I'm guessing the running game just really took over. But that is another aspect that has gotten better. If there's a silver lining of anything, is that red zone scoring has gotten better, and the decision making has kind of shifted to another area. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So that was kind of a great back and forth, guys. It's really going to prepare for a game that, I think both teams want to establish the run early. I think that Auburn is going to do the same. They don't want to go out there and go bombs away because they feel like, there's some leakage in Texas A&M secondary, which we will start with Will Lee. There's senior cornerback who, again, not here to trash, not here to, again, we're not here to do that's not our job, but he has struggled in coverage. And I think a lot of that has to do with sophomore Des Ricks, who I've been talking about, me and Ken have been talking about throughout the last 2 months, how great he's been. He's lived up to the hype. He has barely been targeted for a great reason. He's made a couple deflections. He made one of the bigger plays against Notre Dame. When you're not throwing to one guy, you're going to throw to the other guy. And so you're going to try to put your best receiver on him. And to be honest, Lee's been kind of interesting to watch because he made a key play at the goal line to prevent a Notre Dame touchdown on a deflection. But there were some big plays where he just couldn't keep up and he was just getting exposed by bigger receivers. And in my opinion, I think it's going to slow down. I think he is going to regain because he's got a lot on the line, right? You got to think of these guys who are seniors who are trying to get to the NFL. All this tape matters. So especially against competition like Cam Coleman, like Eric Singleton, who they're going to try to put on him. Look, that's going to be the matchup of the day, in my opinion, outside of, A&M's defensive tackles against Auburn's run game and trying to contain Jackson Arnold from shredding you with his legs. Because we do know that when we watch Baylor, not going to compare Baylor's defense to A&M's. That was also an opening game, and not everybody's kind of ready to play football yet. But Arnold, when he gets an open seam, he's off, and he's hard to take down. He's a bigger guy. He's very tough. He's confident. We saw that a little bit with Oklahoma, but he's really ramped it up. And I think a lot of that personally had to do with the competition and all the talk from all of us in sports media saying, well, is he going to be the guy because of this video and because, they may play 3 quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff. And I think a former 5-star quarterback is like, no, I'm the guy, and I'm going to show you why I'm the guy. But like you told me after the game, he kind of holds that ball on like, well, I forget what you said, but I kind of looked at it like holding a newborn, like don't drop him.
Yeah, it's a precious jewel.
Yeah,
you can't let it go.
You can't let it go.
But yeah, it's one of those situations where A&M just can't kill themselves in this game. They can't allow Auburn to do what they want. They got to force Auburn to they got to force Jackson Arnold to make good passes. They can't, because he knows, and he's going to see the film all week of. You overthrow Cam Coleman on that deep route. Like, those were easy passes. You just got to set your feet and go. Marcel Reed on the other side missed a couple of those deep passes this year. It's not foreign for quarterbacks to miss those go balls when that guy's wide open because he get too much juice. We all remember from high school, even your quarterback's just like, oh, I got him. Okay, no. Like, that's just how it works sometimes. But yeah, it's a very hard game to predict, in my opinion, right now, because I'm of the ilk of you have a bye week after a big win. It can either go down one or the other road. Is that you're really hyped, you're getting all this positive talk, including from us at Aggies Wire, including from us from this podcast, including everybody else who covers A&M. It's like, wow, they finally did the thing. They finally beat the ranked team on the road. They've ended the curse, blah, blah, blah. But what can they do now? I see all these people in my mentions and stuff all the time. Well, why don't you focus on Auburn? Okay, it's not our job. We have to do everything else. But I understand that, right? I understand the whole focus on the game ahead because we've seen this story before. And for A&M, it's basically A&M's defense against Auburn's offense. That's really the entire game. That sounds basic, but it's not. Because I would say last year, going in every game for A&M, is Marcel Reed going to be accurate? Is the run game going to get going? Because we don't trust these wide receivers. They're not fast enough. They can't separate, all that stuff. Well, we already know that's not a problem in terms of separation. But getting Auburn, because that they're going to get into that stadium. It's going to be loud. They're going to be excited. And Auburn's coming off a loss, which I would say is very painful for them. More painful for John Mateer, obviously, but painful for them in the fact that we were this close to pulling off a victory that could have changed our season, could have altered it, right? Could have changed.
Is it painful, or are we numb to it?
Well, yeah, but
there's certainly a conversation, Taylor. There's certainly a conversation.
Fans that because
is it a heartbreaking thing, or is it just another day on the plains of Alabama?
I think Auburn fans would definitely agree that it's probably more of the numbing effect that they've grown accustomed to under Hugh Freeze. Wouldn't you agree?
Him, Brian Harsin, the couple years of Gus Malzahn, which is really which I'll go on record and say that I wasn't for the Malzahn firing, and looking back at it, it continues to be like, I don't know if I would have made that move if I were the AD. But it's it's bad now when, Malzahn, averaged about 4 or 5 losses a year. And Auburn fans are like, man, I wish we could get that back. If we could just lose 5 7, life is going to be incredible. Yeah, I think it's one of those that I think until Auburn can prove that they can win the big one, which again, this storyline is completely gone now because Auburn's not ranked in the polls anymore. They were ranked for the first time in the US LBM coaches poll. I will say that, Cameron.
Gotta get that plug in.
The Associated Press poll were ranked in both of those polls for the first time since 2021, which is hard for me to believe. But I think it was the Ole Miss win. Brian Harsin beat Lane Kiffin, if you can believe that. That win in 2021 was the win that put them in the poll the last time. And they come in ranked in both polls, and they had 2 opportunities to get a top 15 win on the road for the first time since 2021 as a ranked team. Oklahoma and then Texas A&M. Texas A&M, of course, in the bye week did their part. They beat Notre Dame. They get to stay in there. Auburn didn't. So it's just, until that big win comes, it's always going to be, dang, it's the same old, same old. And a win like this over A&M, or in 2 weeks, a night game at Jordan-Hare against Georgia, that could be a fun one too. But until then, it's almost like Hugh Freeze is still in a prove it mode. It's like you can recruit, but can you win the big game with those?
And I think some of the thing is, from what I've heard, is that after year 3 and 4 of Hugh Freeze, you can't exactly be in that figure it out stage, from what I understand from Auburn fans. But as of right now, I know it's only been a couple of games and they've played, South Alabama and Baylor, but they're holding their opponents to, I believe, the top 1 or 2 in the nation in opponent yards rush. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on, is because coming into this season, Texas A&M's running back room was kind of heralded as one of the top rooms in this entire SEC. You had experienced guys like Le'Veon Moss. You had a returning 5-star prospect of Reuben Owens. You had Amari Daniels, who was a go-to guy in certain spots, especially when Le'Veon Moss went down last year. But coming into this year, they were kind of expecting A&M to go full on with the rush-heavy attack and kind of beat these long 12-play, 7-minute drives, 8-minute drives down your throat and kind of beat teams that way. But so far, what we have seen in these first couple of games is actually Marcel Reed's actually beaten teams with his arm so far, especially that Notre Dame game. It doesn't really matter what the completion percentage says. He was just beating teams with his arm. But this is one of those games where it's going to be really, really interesting to see, especially with a defensive coordinator that A&M fans are familiar with in DJ Durkin, and where his rush defense is going to be. Because we saw here at A&M while he was here, it left a couple of things to be desired, but especially with an experienced running back room like this, where do you kind of see that kind of stays pat for Auburn, or is it maybe a little inflated from the couple of games they've had in between Baylor and Oklahoma?
It is, that's the defensive side of the rush has been very impressive. And what impresses me more is that Keldrick Falk hasn't been as much of a factor as a lot of people thought that he would. Coming in, Keldrick Falk, NFL first-round draft pick, which I still think he will be. He's got the tangibles to do it, regardless of what his stats say at the end of the year, or what they could say at the end of the year. But the two guys that have really impressed me this year are a couple of transfers. One that came in last year, Kieran Crawford, a edge rusher from Arkansas State, kind of got his feet wet last year, has really taken off this year. And then LSU linebacker transfer Xavier Atkins. These two guys, I kind of joke around with our other writers that anytime Xavier Atkins does anything well, I said that Auburn Wire is a Xavier Atkins website because we are big fans of him. And it's even better because he was at LSU for 1 year, didn't really get the chance, so we didn't know what to expect. And he's just killing it this year. A lot of tackles for loss. He's usually top 2, top 3 in tackles every single game. A big fan of him. And then Kieran Crawford has really come on, and it's really funny to me too because I didn't really pick up on this until earlier this year. I don't know how I missed it, but he only played 1 year of high school football. Like he left his high school, which I think was in Memphis somewhere. He left his high school still not really knowing how to get into a 3-point stance. He wasn't sure about like positioning. Goes to Arkansas State, does what he does, and then comes to Auburn and is now one of the top run defenders of the entire game. So the front seven, I'm really impressed with. Defensive back wise, kind of disappointed in the way that they've defended the pass, and because you look at what Sylvester Smith, Caleb Harris did. Jay Crawford was another guy that did a lot of good things last year, and Champ Anthony, bless his heart, he snaps his leg in the Arkansas game. He comes back. I think it was the Baylor game, broke his thumb. So he's just it's like he's a pincushion, bless his heart. But he got back in there last week, club and everything, still doing what he does. But yeah, I think it is a fair assessment that the run defense at Auburn has been legit this year, and it's going to be interesting to see what they can do against a team that was expected to bring a run-heavy offense like the Texas A&M Aggies were, because you look at Baylor, Sawyer Robertson, they're known to pass. Oklahoma, John Mateer, they're known to pass. Ball State is Ball State, we'll say that. Texas A&M's got a really good running back room, and it's going to be really interesting to see how well they do against a running back unit that is kind of like matches them, I guess, as far as the talent level and what they can bring to the offense. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I don't think Colin Klein is looking to run the ball for. I mean, they're going to try, like I said, at the beginning of the show, they're going to try to establish a run. I mean, that's what everybody wants to do. They're going to try to be creative about it, but at the end of the day, if you can't do it, you're going to have to pass the ball, and you're going to have to focus. I mean, I could see this being another Le'Veon Moss 15 plus snaps, carries. And look, they might have to just rely on him again to average at least 4.5 yards per carry to keep this thing going a little bit, to keep this train rolling so that Marcel doesn't have to drop back every single play. But that's the thing they have to deal with in the SEC. They're going to, because the problem with hype is that opposing defenses are always going to look to stop that immediately. So we didn't know that this passing game was going to blow up like this. We had hopes, right? We thought, well, again, bring more speed and quickness, you're going to have more separation, which is going to help Marcel reach his targets. We didn't know it was going to do this at all. Like, especially in that Auburn game, that really kind of told us, okay, this is an elite group. And if a quarterback's doing this right now, and I think it's Brooks Austin, who does kind of the film guy stuff. I think he's a writer for Georgia with Sports Illustrated. He did one of the best breakdowns of Marcel Reed and said those were big boy throws, right? Completion percentage wasn't great, but they came into this game wanting to get explosive plays through the air. And if you can do that every game, you don't need to have an elite run game. And the fact is that last season, why they were better, well, maybe they just had to focus on it more. They needed that to work to have any real offense because they couldn't rely on their passing game. They just couldn't. And there's only a handful of games where, actually against Auburn last year in the overtime win for the Tigers, Marcel Reed really had to have his best game. And yes, his receivers stepped up for the most part, but if you had this crop of receivers last year, we're talking 2 or 3 more wins, right? Because I can just see it right now. We're talking because there were some close losses, especially against the Texas Longhorns at the end of the season. That was a 17-7 game. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't separate. Noah Thomas, who's now with Georgia, he was the only one who got any bit of separation, and that was against that was elite route running, right? They were going against Johnny Barron, a couple NFL level corners. I forget the other one who's with the Eagles right now, but I mean, it was a very, very good group, right? And so an average A&M wide receiver core can't do anything against them. And so it's just very different now because we're always going to go into these games thinking, well, hopefully A&M can run the ball. But it's not one of those things of, okay, if Le'Veon Moss doesn't get going, we're scoring. Because that was kind of how it was last year, because I got to think back to the Arkansas game, the last one in Jerry World, yeah, I forget. It was I think they started the game out with a long pass to Noah Thomas. He was pretty much wide open. And then Marcel Reed struggled in the pocket because there were some accuracy issues. But again, he just didn't have the guys to get it done, to get those yak yards, to really hurt Arkansas secondary. And it was up to Le'Veon Moss, who at the end of the game just put the team on his back and had a couple explosive runs that got into the red zone. And yes, Marcel had called some great plays. They ended up getting the close win. It's just this team, they didn't want to do that anymore, and that's why they went out and got these two elite wide receivers. And I think it's the same for Auburn, right? They're hoping that, the run game should get us through some matchups, hopefully. We want that. But we went out and got Singleton to pair with Cam Coleman because we want to be able to beat these teams through the air when we have to. It's just, can our quarterback hit them in stride? That's the biggest thing. If they can do that, that's why we all kind of pumped up Auburn in the offseason. Outside of that small window where we were talking about, oh, crap, is he a good quarterback or not? Look, I think he's fine. I think Arnold is going to have better games. I think it's very hard, and we've seen it with five-star prospects. You and I, Taylor, we've all been covering college football for a while, recruiting. A lot of these guys don't pan out. When Arch Manning is struggling, someone put the recruiting class up. So this is the worst quarterback class I've ever seen. I was like,
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah, I'm glad you did.
And I'm going to be honest. I was writing about DJ Lagway's injury, because Florida's playing A&M in a couple weeks, right? And I'm just kind of looking at his numbers, and I'm going, wow, 5 interceptions against LSU. It's like we didn't think that these guys would struggle this much because sometimes, and I'm not saying the experts are wrong, but it's not looking great right now, right? So for Arnold, it's a personal thing too, because he was heralded coming out of high school. We all thought he was the next Heisman winner type of player for Oklahoma in that long line under Lane Kiffin, Lincoln Riley, Lane Kiffin. But yeah, it's going to be one of those interesting matchups where you're coming off a very painful loss for them. I get it's run of the mill for Auburn fans, same with A&M, but it's going to fall on his shoulders. I'm going to be honest, for them to have a chance in this game, because if A&M gets pressure early, we were all saying, Texas A&M senior edge, Cassius Alva licking his chops. He's seeing. I'm going to be honest, I will say that Oklahoma's front is very good, very talented, very deep. But it's not like A&M's guys, who are a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, can't get to him either, right? Because we talk about Albert Regis, I believe a 4-star player. We talk about DJ Hicks, a 5-star prospect, one of the highest ranked defensive tackles in recruiting history. We talk about Cassius Howell, who, he was a 2- or 3-star player, but he plays like a 4- or 5-star player based on the experience. So if they can get pressure early and really get into his head, I'd pick A&M all day. But if it becomes one of those games where, again, Auburn gets an early score, you have to play catch-up, kind of like they did against Notre Dame, because I'm going to be honest, when they got behind 7-0, they blocked that punt. I was sitting there, didn't go to the game for various reasons, but I was like, okay, this is not trending in the right direction, because A&M has not been able to match teams when they get behind, outside of last year's overtime loss to Auburn when they were down 21-0, and they did come back, but that was kind of random. But I'm not saying they should do that. They can do it. But I think getting back home in front of a potentially sold out, close to it, Kyle Field, you need to take full advantage of that, and you can't let Auburn spoil the party just because they're upset and they need, Hugh Freeze is fighting for, I guess, I don't know if he's fighting for his job this season. I really don't know, but he's fighting for the next 2 years probably to even have a head coaching job in a prestigious position like this.